Those who have left the theater mid-show, what were you watching and what made you leave? A girl I was seeing insisted that if we brought her 2-year-old with us to the movies he'd be quiet and probably fall asleep. I was so embarrassed about how poorly he was acting I took him out of the theater about 5 minutes in. It was some movie about bank robbers or something. She and her friend stayed for the rest of the movie. She wasn't a very good girlfriend. Dude, frick that. I walked out of Battlefield Earth just after they taught themselves how to fly Harrier jets. It was being shown in a movie theater on a Navy base so it was free. Hey, this is my one and only walkout too. It was just so bad, even to 13-year-old kids. I saw Dunkirk the third day it was in theaters. I knew not a lot of people were interested, but when me and my buddy got there it was totally empty. The movie is almost started and a flood of middle schoolers come in, no parents or chaperones. I kid you not, like 30-40 of them. We got 10 minutes in and demanded a refund because we couldn't watch the movie. These kids were ridiculous and they sent an usher in and some of them were asked to leave because they were throwing stuff. We got our money back and a pair of free tickets for a later showing. Sounds like a history teacher trying to be cool and telling his class to go see it. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. I was too scared. We left and walked into the Sandlot. I was like 7 and don't know why I was scared. Because that movie is genuinely horrifying. Boss Baby. I was the only one in that theater and there was a fire alarm. It was a false alarm. They said they'd reset all the movies but didn't reset mine. As a non-confrontational person, I just left. This is the saddest thing I've ever heard. I was a little kid when Chicken Run came out. My family raised chickens as pets and we thought it would be a cute Shaun the Sheep type of film due to the claymation. As soon as that crazy bee baked a chicken into a pie, I was sobbing and my dad rushed me out of the theater. Chickens go in, pies come out. Oh, what kind? Apple. Oh, my favorite. Incredibles 2. The kid next to me was non-stop talking throughout the movie and the parents did nothing to stop it. I finally lost it when someone's baby had been screaming for 5 minutes straight and they never left the theater. I walked out of Incredibles 2 because my 3-year-old daughter started getting restless and instead of subjecting the entire theater to her crying I left. I tried to go see Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone with my grandma when I was younger, but we walked into not another teen movie. The opening scene is the main girl masturbating, so we ducked out real quick. My mom took me to see NATM when it came out because I asked. I was 10. I witnessed this today. I went to go see Holmes and Watson. During the scene when they are essentially talking about drunk texts and dong pics, the family to left of us walked out. 5 minutes later the family to right of us walked out as well. Went from being super crowded row to us having the back row to ourselves. Was pretty nice. LOL. Long ago, far away, a group of us in college went to an avant-garde art film near campus. That art film turned out to be Solo, 120 Days of Sodom, by Piersolo Pasolini. This group of young, hip, experiential college students didn't last very long in that flick before bailing. It's easy to Google, I'd feel funny describing it. I've never walked out of a movie, but I was close with The Passion of the Christ. It wasn't the movie itself, just the fact that a church group sitting behind me had brought their toddlers along. Some guy is getting tortured to death on screen, and there are kids behind me talking about going to Chuck E. Cheese afterward. The cognitive dissonance was agonizing. Interesting. To this day I tell people that the worst movie experience of my life was in the theater watching Passion of the Christ. Cell phones ringing, kids running up and down the aisle, baby crying, adults talking at a regular volume. I already knew how the movie ended so wasn't too bothered, but still. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief. I was so mad that it was absolutely nothing like the books. They completely changed the entire plot. For my 11th birthday I brought all of my friends to see The Lightning Thief in theaters and left the movie devastated. There's a Lightning Thief musical now that's extremely faithful to the book and is packed with references. It's geared towards kids, but the soundtrack is worth checking out on Spotify. As a bunch of 20+ geekish Star Trek Babylon 5 fans we were going to watch Galaxy Quest. Halfway one of my friends walks out because he was so insulted how it portrayed his Star Trek experience. That made this double as good as the movie already was. I still freaking love GQ to this day, probably watch it once or twice a year. Movie 43. I went with my cousin who really thought it would be great. I made it partway through the Hugh Jackman skit before I just had to leave. My cousin was laughing his head off so he stayed. I went to the entrance to play on my phone when I ran into a few of my students and their parents who invited me to go to the arcade with them. So like any good 4th grade teacher, I destroyed them in air hockey and basketball free throw. Besides being a good way to kill some time, I got a lot of respect from the parents for not just ignoring their kids. You'll be happy to know it won a Golden Raspberry for Worst Film. I walked out of Sky High. I was having a kidney stone attack and rolling around on the floor of a theater seemed impolite. I like Sky High but kidney stones are the worst. I sympathize and I hope you haven't had any reoccurrences. Keep drinking that water. The remake of The Hills Have Eyes. They have a scene where the father was crucified and set on fire. Lots of screaming. At the same time some girl is being raped in their RV so she's screaming too. The sound system was so loud and seeing that did something to me. Usually I'm good with horror and such but my heart was beating out of control. I never felt anything like it. I whispered to my friend that I had to leave and spent an hour in a comic shop nearby just cooling down from the whole thing. I have to turn the movie off or skip that scene every time. It's rough. Deadpool 2. I was so freaking depressed that I couldn't follow what was happening at all. I left feeling so defeated. Happily, I just watched it a week ago and thoroughly enjoyed it. Glad you ended up enjoying yourself. Not quite like the other answers, but still fits. Was watching the musical Dear Evan Hansen, and at the intermission, I got up and left not knowing that it wasn't over yet. I felt really weird about it because it was sudden and there was no bowing or wrap up or anything, but I still walked out, got a cab back to my hotel, and only right as soon as I got out of the cab, I looked up the soundtrack to make sure I didn't miss half the show, realized I totally did, then spent a bunch of time trying to get another cab. LOL, my brother watched The Martian and thought it was over at one point. Haven't seen the movie so I don't know, and left. Yeah, he never got back to Earth. Later I read that he did indeed make it back to Earth. Myself and a couple of my friends bought tickets to see Disney Monkeys and snuck into the Get Hard theater, rated R. Security caught us and kicked us out. We asked if we could go back to Disney Monkeys. They said either we could leave or watch Paul Blart Mall Cop 2. We left. This is amazing if it's true and that security guard is a gem. I went to see Inspector Gadget when I was a kid and they kept screwing up the film reel and had to restart it 3 times. Then the movie theater caught fire and we had to leave. I never ended up seeing it, LOL. It was a sign from God. The new Holmes movie with Will Ferrell. I'm actually sitting outside right now waiting for the rest of my party to go finish it. It is an absolute piece of garbage that no one should go see. The best way to describe how it fails is it's the kind of movie where all the bits are something that might sound mildly interesting as a premises, but are unoriginal and just meh. It really is quite insulting and I adore the majority of Will Ferrell's other films. In other words, one must be inebriated to find its merit. I take this into consideration when viewing a wide range of films because sometimes you just won't have the heart to subscribe to the writing. Hardcore Henry. Only thing in history to make me motion sick. Puked twice on the carpeted floor before I made it to the bathroom. Then once in the bathroom and then once in the parking lot for good measure. Had to call my mom to get me cause I didn't want to puke while driving home. Lasted less than 30 minutes. That's a shame. I really liked Hardcore Henry. It's an insanely over-the-top adrenaline rush. Would have done it with Percy Jackson. Sea of Monsters if I weren't on the younger side and afraid of being kidnapped. And as someone who read the books and was literally writing my own fanfic at the time, the movie was 100% unacceptable. It was so wrong in so many ways and broke my poor little demigod heart and nearly ruined the entire series for me. I feel your pain in a way I can't explain. The 2017 movie Kidnap with Halle Berry. I had to leave because this lady had so many chances to save her kid within the first 20 minutes of him being taken. It got to the point where I'm asking myself if she really does want her kid back. This is one of my top bad movies. My fave was the constant cut to stock footage of her MPH needle going from 40 to 60. Like, it didn't matter where she was, could be a freeway or a back road. Every time she accelerated she went 40 to 60. I left a high school performance of Mary Poppins at intermission because the sound was very bad. I couldn't understand the dialogue. From what I could tell, the leading lady was a talented singer but otherwise, terrible show, and I live for high school musicals. Wildcats, everywhere, throw your hands up in the air. Suicide Squad was the only one I wish I had. I stuck it out in some vain hope it would somehow redeem itself, but it was just so comically and terribly bad. Some of the character intros when taken as a separate thing, not bad. Movie, terrible. When will all the attempts to recreate the Avengers stop skipping the individual backstory films already? As an Australian, watching any scene with Captain Boomerang made me cringe so freaking hard. Went to see Phantom of the Opera 2, Electric Boogaloo. I'm pretty sure that's not the real title, but that's what I called it. I had never seen the first, but it's my girlfriend's favorite musical, so I went with her. I fell asleep during the first act, but when I woke up she was so sad because she hated the music and apparently they fricked up the story hard. I offered to take her for ice cream instead of watching the second act and she jumped at the opportunity. This is great. There is a movie called Boogie Nights 2, Electric Boogaloo. My father-in-law got really excited one day that it was on, and the second they started singing he goes, "Yeah, that's enough of that," and changed it. Poseidon, my friends and I took some acid and decided to see a movie. If you haven't seen it, Poseidon is a remake of the Poseidon Adventure, wherein a cruise ship gets flipped upside down by a rogue wave and a group of people have to try to escape the upside down death ship before it sinks too far underwater. It was super traumatizing to our drug-addled selves and we had to nope out of there and go find a playground to chill out. Kurt Russell is good in it, but he's good in everything. Spider-Man 3. There was a medical emergency while watching and immediately had to leave. Went back about a week later, get to roughly the same part, get called on another medical emergency, said frick it, ended up just waiting it out and bought it on DVD. My first mistake was finishing that movie. A third medical emergency would have been less painful. The Predator movie that just came out. I think it was when Olivia Munn's character said something along the lines of, "Some scientists think that autism is the next step of human evolution. That, and, with global warming, how much time do humans have left? 2-3 years, maybe less?" I liked it. Also, he said 2-3 generations, not years. 2 times, one not me. Q was just over the top gore violence, thought I was having a heart attack. South Park movie. There were at least 3 different signs saying, "Not family friendly." Parents had a toddler who they physically lifted out of their one arm each during the first musical number, with the opening line, "Shut your F face, Uncle F." Edinburgh Fringe show, and the dude literally insulted half the audience based on very tense politics. Half the room left. I was with that half. It was damning too. Small venue and we were literally 5 feet from the performer. College production of Pirates of Penzance. Sitting in the second row, and the actor's projection and diction was so bad I could not understand them, and I know every word. Stayed till intermission and did not return. Not me, but what I witnessed. Me and my friend went to go watch IT when it came in theaters, and halfway through when the kids are in Pennywise's lair, some lady in front of us stands up and yells out nope and continues for a good minute or 2 while her boyfriend was trying to calm her down. Eventually she gets up and says, "I can't take this anymore," and leaves. Some people in the theater start to clap as she leaves and her boyfriend just awkwardly chases after her. Wasn't me, but the only time I ever saw someone walk out of a theater was watching the movie Mother with Jennifer Lawrence. Spoilers if you haven't seen it. The movie is very strange throughout, but the intense ending where the newborn baby is getting eaten was when the first couple in the theater walked out. The second was when Jennifer Lawrence was getting stomped on the ground that 2 more couples left. That was a super intense scene. I wonder how many worldwide walked out at that point. It was a performance of Shen Yun, art that connects heaven and earth. You've probably seen ads for it around town and on YouTube. My wife and I thought it was going to be some cool Chinese acrobatics and traditional dance. We made a date night out of it and everything. Dressed up real nice. Shelled out for $80 tickets. Drove downtown. Not only was the actual performance of incredibly mediocre quality, it also turned out to be propaganda for some kooky Chinese cult called Falun Gong. We got through such memorable skits as, Wise Sensei cures gayness. Dutiful husband and leader abandons everyone to paint Buddha statues after one heck of an acid trip. Totally not communists kill everyone. Then mushroom clouds. Then everyone is alive again because Jesus faith or something. It was a freaking train wreck. I kinda wanted to ride the rainbow to the crazy center, but my wife got super unconformable and we left. We ended up eating tapas, doing shots and bashing the thing for the rest of the night. What a trip. Star Trek V, the one Shatner directed. I got up and left when they showed Uhuru dancing. It was pretty obviously not Uhuru below the neck. I mean, I got nothing against Uhuru. It was just an ugly, awful, poorly done scene. By far the most awful of the Star Trek movies. I watched this on video when it came out and it was just awful. Kirk blowing up God with a photon torpedo was plain weird. I walked out of Batman vs Superman when Batman branded people, which somehow convinced prisoners to murder them. It was difficult to walk out though because I was watching it at home. Little Shop of Horrors. If you don't know, Little Shop is about a giant man-eating plant. My dad took sissy 11-year-old me home at intermission because of the voice of the plant really freaked me out. This was a high school production, and when I joined this theater program in 9th grade, I found out that the plant had been voiced by a freshman at the time. Feed me, Seymour. Feed me. There was a show in London that the school I was with took us to. Our artistic director really hyped it up. The show was based in America where we were all from, and basically tried to combat every type of violence in the country using real life examples. Sandy Hook, a Texas prison riot, the Brown campus sexual assault case. It was too close to home for a lot of us, and the jokes in the show that the audience were laughing at just weren't funny to any of us in the program. Basically what made me leave was they didn't disclose that there would be live gunshots on stage, and I was dealing with a close friend's recent suicide, and one character out a gun under his chin and pulled the trigger. I basically freaked out and had to walk back to our hostel. Plus, the accents were awful. Oof, that sounds horrible. Happy Feet. My girlfriend, at the time, and I were the only ones in the theater, so we were making out. She got on top of me, and we were asked to leave. There were like 5 employees watching us, so they watched you make out. Alice in Wonderland, 2010. My girlfriend at the time and I snuck in a bottle of whiskey when we went to see it and ended up bored and drunk, so we decided to leave. Justice League. What made me love was another patron sitting behind us that kept making an annoying noise. IDK if it was a tick or what, but this dude kept making that KSH noise like a soda dispenser makes after dispensing soda. I have misophonia, so I was irate with the guy. The theater gave us 2 sets of complimentary tickets because of it. I had only asked to come back at a different time, but the girl working at customer service went above and beyond, which was nice. Not a movie, but we got given tickets to see Shenyang Performing Arts. They bill themselves as one of the world's premier classical Chinese dance and music company. Yeah, turns out they are a money-making front for Falun Gong and push their propaganda during the show. We left at the break because 1. We don't like being preached at, and 2. Only about 1/2 of what we saw was actually any good. I had my first ever case of vertigo while watching Mad Max Fury Road. My friends and I had the unfortunate luck of walking into a full theater with the only seats available being in the very front row, right under the screen. The angle of looking up at the screen combined with the strobe light sandstorm scene, you know, the one they warned everyone about before the movie even hit theaters, made me so nauseous I left the theater, threw up my cherry icy, and went back in to tell my friends I had to split. I still haven't finished that movie. Frick, I'm getting old. I assumed theater here referred to live theater and got confused when people kept mentioning movie titles. It might be regional, I'm young in the UK and nobody calls cinemas movie theaters. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.